Last Friday, you probably got your paycheck. And if you were like most people, you looked at your gross income and felt a brief moment of pride. But then your eyes moved down to the net income. And right there, nestled in the middle, was a massive, gaping hole where 20, maybe 30% of your hard-earned money used to be. The government didn't send you a bill. They didn't politely ask for a contribution to the national budget. They just forced your employer to intercept your cash, pull it right out of your account, and send it off to Washington before you even had the chance to touch it. Now, keep that feeling of frustration in your mind, because in the year 2007, Jeff Bezos, a man whose net worth was entirely in the billions, paid exactly $0 in federal income tax. Elon Musk, the richest man on the face of the earth, notoriously paid a true tax rate of roughly 3.2% over a multi-year period. Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors in human history, famously admitted that he pays a lower tax rate than his own secretary. So how is this possible? How does a billionaire legally pay less of their wealth to the government than the barista pouring their morning coffee? How is it mathematically possible that the people who own the most assets on the planet contribute the smallest percentage of their net worth back into the system? They didn't smuggle cash in a briefcase to the Cayman Islands. They didn't bury gold bars in the desert. And they certainly didn't commit tax fraud. The ultra-wealthy don't break the rules. They simply play by an entirely different set of rules. They use a completely legal, practically invisible financial cheat code hidden deep inside the United States tax system. It is a three-step financial maneuver known to the elite as buy, borrow, die. And today, we are going to expose exactly how this system works, the crazy math behind it, and explain how the game of wealth is completely rigged against you. If you want to understand why the rich get richer while the middle class stays stuck on a hamster wheel, you have to realize that the global economy is not a single system. It is a massive, multiplayer video game. But the secret that Wall Street doesn't want you to know is that there are actually two completely different games you can play. Right now, you and 99% of the global population are playing on Level 1, the public game. In Level 1, the rules of the game are simple. You trade your physical time for cash. You work an hour, you get paid for an hour. This is the W-2 earned income. Now, let's look at a player in this game. Meet Average Andy. Average Andy is a good guy. He followed the script perfectly. He went to college, took on student debt, got a degree, and landed a solid corporate job making $80,000 a year. Andy thinks he is doing everything right. But Andy doesn't realize that the game is mathematically programmed to defeat him, because on Level 1, your rival is income tax. Earned W-2 income is the most heavily penalized asset class in the entire universe. It wasn't always this way. Before World War II, if you owed taxes, you calculated them at the end of the year and wrote the government a check. But during the war, the government needed massive amounts of cash to fund the military. So, they invented something called tax withholding. They essentially turned the corporations into tax collectors. They realized that if people actually had to write a massive check for thousands of dollars every April, they would riot in the streets. But if the money was just skimmed off the top of every single paycheck, people might just accept it. And they were entirely right. So, Andy earns his $80,000. But before the money even leaves the payroll department, the IRS steps in. They take federal income tax. They take state income tax. They take Social Security and Medicare. By the time the money actually lands in Andy's checking account, almost 30 to 40% of his effort has been stolen from him. But the punishment on Level 1 doesn't stop there. Because Andy is paid in cash, he is trapped in a maze of secondary taxes. Andy takes his leftover money and goes out into the world to survive. He buys groceries, puts gas in his car, he buys a new laptop. Every time he swipes his card, he is hit with a sales tax. He saves up and buys a modest suburban house. Now he owes property tax every single year. And hovering above all of this is the ultimate, invisible, unvoted tax: inflation. Every single day that Andy holds his hard-earned cash in a regular savings account, the central banks are printing more currency and secretly robbing Andy of his purchasing power. Andy works hard. And after 5 years of 80-hour weeks, he gets a massive promotion. His salary jumps to $130,000. Andy is thrilled. He thinks he is finally getting ahead in the game. But because the United States uses a progressive tax bracket system, Andy's new money is taxed at an even higher rate. The system is designed like a treadmill. The harder Andy runs, the faster the belt moves in the opposite direction. The psychology of level 1 is designed to keep you trapped in an illusion. You are conditioned to believe that the only way to get wealthier is to increase your salary. But increasing your salary just feeds you directly into a higher tax bracket. You are trying to fill a bucket with water, but the IRS has already drilled holes in it. This is the W-2 trap. As long as you are playing by the rules of level 1, you will never, ever achieve true wealth. The mathematics of the tax code literally do not allow it. So, how do the elites escape this? The secret is they don't try to beat level 1. They ignore it completely. Welcome to level 2. This is phase 1 of the next cheat code. Buy. Here, the players look completely different. Meet Billionaire Bob. Bob doesn't have a W-2. He doesn't clock in. Bob doesn't care about a salary. In fact, if you look at Bob's paycheck, you will see that his salary is exactly $1 per year. Because Billionaire Bob understands that income is a liability. Remember, the IRS only attacks when money moves from a corporation into your personal bank account. That movement is legally defined as a taxable event. So, instead of taking a massive cash salary that would instantly be slashed in half, Bob takes his compensation in company stock. Here is where the psychology of the wealthy completely deviates from the middle class. Average Andy views money as a liquid. He needs it to flow so he can pay his bills and survive. But if you have a river of liquid water, the IRS can easily build a dam and scoop 30% of it. Billionaire Bob views money as a frozen glacier. The IRS cannot drink ice. They cannot tax an asset that is simply sitting there, frozen in place. To understand this legally, we have to look back at a landmark Supreme Court case from 1920 called Eisner versus Macomber. The Supreme Court established the precedent that the government cannot tax the increased value of an asset until that asset is sold. Think of it like an apple tree. The tree itself represents your asset, your stock portfolio, your real estate, your business. The apples that fall off the tree represent cash income, like a salary or a stock dividend. The Supreme Court ruled that the government is only allowed to tax the apples. They cannot tax the tree. Let's say Bob starts a tech company. He owns 10 million shares. When he started it in his garage, the shares were worth $1 each. Over the next 10 years, his company explodes and goes public on the stock exchange. The stock price shoots up to $100 a share. Bob's 10 million shares are now worth $1 billion. Bob has made $990 million in pure profit. But Bob hasn't sold the stock, so he hasn't realized the gain. In the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service, Bob hasn't made a single penny, so his tax bill is zero. If Bob were to hit the sell button, everything would instantly change. Selling the stock chops down the tree and triggers capital gains tax. Bob is going to owe the government tens of millions of dollars. So, Bob refuses to sell and he just keeps buying. This is the entire essence of the buy phase. Accumulate assets that appreciate in value without producing taxable income. But wait, if Bob never sells his stock, how does he actually buy anything? How does he buy that $50 million mega yacht? How does he buy the mansions in Malibu and the private jets? You cannot walk into a luxury shipyard and hand the dealer a piece of paper that says you own shares in a tech company. They want cash. So what does he do? How does Bob get the cash without triggering the tax? He uses the next cheat code. Welcome to Level 3, the borrowing phase. This is the beating heart of the billionaire playbook. Listen very closely because understanding this single mathematical trick will permanently change how you view the entire global economy. Bob doesn't sell his stock to get cash. Instead, he goes to an elite Wall Street bank and walks into the private wealth management division. Bob sits down with his private banker and says, "I have $1 billion in corporate stock. I want a mega yacht that costs $50 million, but I won't sell my stock to buy it." Now, contrast this with what happens when average Andy goes to a bank for a loan. Andy wants a $300,000 mortgage for a modest home. The bank treats Andy like an absolute criminal. They demand his last 3 years of W-2 tax returns. They demand his pay stubs. They run a hard inquiry on his credit score and make him fill out 80 pages of paperwork just to prove he is worthy of borrowing money. But when Bob walks in, he brings exactly one piece of paper: his brokerage statement showing his billion-dollar stock portfolio. The banker smiles and says, "No problem, Bob. We will give you a $50 million loan in cash today, and in exchange, you will pledge your stock as collateral." This financial weapon is called a securities-backed line of credit. Some call it a margin loan or a Lombard loan. Whatever you call it, for the ultra-wealthy, it is an infinite money glitch. The bank wires $50 million of tax-free cash directly into Bob's checking account. Now, why is this tax-free? Why doesn't the IRS swoop in and take their cut? Because under the foundational laws of the United States tax code, debt is not income. When you swipe a credit card to buy a television at Best Buy, you don't pay income tax, right? It's borrowed money. You have a legal obligation to pay it back to the credit card company. The IRS cannot tax you on a loan because you haven't gained any net wealth. You received cash, but you also received an equal amount of debt. But wait, it's a loan. The bank is not giving him money for free. And you are entirely right. Bob does have to pay interest, but this is where the math gets even crazier. Let's do a side-by-side comparison of Bob's options. Option A, Bob sells $50 million of his stock to buy the yacht. The government hits him with a 20% long-term capital gains tax. That means Bob would have to pay $10 million to the IRS. Option B, Bob borrows the $50 million. Because Bob is a billionaire, and his loan is fully secured by a highly liquid billion-dollar asset, the bank views this loan as practically zero risk. If Bob defaults, the bank just legally seizes the stock. So, the bank gives Bob an incredibly low interest rate. While you might pay 8% on a mortgage or 25% on a credit card, Bob is paying maybe 2 or 3% interest on his margin loan. 3% interest on a $50 million loan is $1.5 million a year. Would you rather pay the government a non-refundable $10 million in taxes right now, or pay a bank $1.5 million in interest over the course of a year? The choice is obvious. Bob chooses option B every single time. Paying 3% to a bank is a lot cheaper than paying 20% to the government. But here's the craziest part of the borrow phase. Bob doesn't even pay the interest out of his own pocket. Remember, Bob didn't sell his stock. His entire $1 billion stock portfolio is still sitting in the market. And historically, the stock market grows by an average of 8 to 10% per year. If Bob's stock portfolio grows by just 6% this year, that means his net worth goes up by $60 million. The growth of his assets completely outpaces the tiny amount of interest he owes the bank. His wealth is generating wealth faster than his debt is generating debt. So how does he pay the $1.5 million interest bill? He just borrows another $1.5 million next year. He rolls the debt over, indefinitely. This isn't a theoretical loophole. When Elon Musk wanted to buy Twitter for $44 billion, he didn't sell all his Tesla stock and pay billions in taxes. He pledged massive chunks of his Tesla shares as collateral to secure massive margin loans from a group of global banks. But right now, you should be extremely skeptical. This sounds too perfect. What happens to Bob if the stock market crashes? This is the only true threat to the big players. It is called the margin call. Everything we just talked about relies on one fundamental assumption. The stock market generally goes up, but sometimes markets crash. Let's say it's 2008, or March of 2020. The global economy tanks. A massive recession strikes. Bob's tech company stock plummets. His $1 billion portfolio crashes, losing 60% of its value in a matter of weeks. His collateral is suddenly only worth $400 million. Bob's phone rings. It's the Wall Street banker, and he is not happy. The bank is terrified that Bob's stock will drop below the value of the loan. The banker is calling to give Bob a margin call. The bank demands that Bob deposit more cash immediately to secure the loan. If not, the bank take Bob's stock and sell it to get their money back. If the bank sells his stock, it automatically triggers the taxable event. Bob will owe money to the IRS and potentially lose all of his wealth. So how do the ultra-elites not get wiped out during recessions? They survive it through extreme mathematical discipline regarding a metric called the loan-to-value ratio. The reality is, when Bob had $1 billion in stock, he only borrowed $50 million. His loan-to-value ratio was 5%. For Bob to actually face a margin call, his company's stock would have to drop by 80 or 90%. Retail traders and average investors get wiped out on margin calls because they borrow too much. So, Bob easily survives the crash. When the market recovers and hits new all-time highs, he borrows more. He buys more real estate. He funds his lavish lifestyle entirely on untaxed debt. But the game of life has a hard stop. Even billionaires are mortal. At the time of his death, Bob is worth billions, but he also has a massive debt. Average Andy is watching this and thinking, this is where the IRS finally gets him. To pay back the banks, Bob's children are going to have to sell a massive chunk of that billion-dollar stock portfolio and trigger that taxable event. The government has been waiting patiently for decades, but the government will never get their tax from Bob. If you like this video so far, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Now back to the video. Welcome to Phase 3, the dying phase. This is where the tax code stops being a collection of loopholes and starts looking like conspiracy. This is the most controversial and overpowered loophole in the entire United States financial system. It is called the step-up in basis. Your basis is the original price you paid for an asset. If Bob started his company in a garage and his original shares were worth practically zero, his basis is zero. Over his lifetime, the stock grew to $10 billion. If Bob sold the stock before he died, he would owe roughly $2 billion in capital gains tax. But when Bob died, the step-up in basis rule is activated. The IRS essentially takes a giant eraser and wipes away all those billions of gains. When Bob's children inherit the stock, their new basis is declared by the government to be the current market value of the stock on the exact day Bob died. And if they were to sell it all, they would owe $0 in taxes. But what about the $1 billion bank loan? Bob's kids sell $1 billion of his stock, pay $0 in tax, and pay off the bank. Bob's kids just keep buying, borrowing, dying, and this cycle goes on. Now, some of you financial nerds are screaming, asking, what about the estate tax, the death tax? The government is supposed to take 40% of any estate over $13 million. Decades before Bob died, he hired an army of tax attorneys, and they placed his assets into a fortress of legal structures: irrevocable trusts, grantor retained annuity trusts, and dynasty trusts based in states like South Dakota, where trusts can legally exist forever. They legally detach Bob's ownership of the assets while he is still alive, so that when he dies, the estate tax doesn't even apply. Because Bob didn't own the money when he died, and a trust is a piece of paper that can't die. The trust never pays an estate tax. If the people holding 90% of the country's wealth are paying an effective tax rate of near zero, the burden of running the entire civilization falls entirely onto the shoulders of the working class. You might be asking, why hasn't Congress fixed this? Why doesn't the government just ban the step-up in basis? Look at who funds the political campaigns. Look at who lobbies the lawmakers. The tax code is not a broken system. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. The government wants to incentivize investment, job creation, and corporate growth. So they write loopholes to reward people who hold capital. They do not want you to simply be an employee trading time for money. So they punish W-2 income with extreme prejudice. But you do not have to be a billionaire to use the cheat code. You have to stop focusing on your salary and start focusing on your equity. The system is rigged, but the rule book is sitting right out in the open. If you like this video, smash that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next episode.